I thought we could start, since we're in the Lyric, about some of your memories of coming to the Lyric from the time you first came and what you had to do to get into the Lyric and what it was like to be in the Lyric and what you had to do to get out and maybe how that changed over time.
You know, my coming to Lyric probably started on Saturday morning down at Wake Forest, where I had to find money to get to Blacksburg and money for admission fee. And so in the morning I would get up and go and cut wood to get to sell this wheelbarrow loads. We got 50 cents a wheelbarrow load. I would cut wood to sell to some of the neighbors to get money, and we'd make arrangement with one of the gentlemen in the community that would drive us to Blacksburg on Saturday night, and he charged us 50 cents to come up here. And so he would pick up a bunch of us kids and bring us to the movie and take us to Blacksburg and take us back. And we had usually need about $1. The 50 cents plus 17 cents to get into the movie. We would come up here, and sometime it's right beside outside of the entrance here to the left, or well, if you're on the outside, it'd be to your right. Coming in was a small shop there where they sold popcorn and sodas and magazines. So we usually would go in and get our popcorn or soda before we come up. And we weren't able to come in on this level, the ground floor. We weren't able to come down here. We sat in the balcony up there. And it's a side door out there, which is now covered with, I noticed they had a post on it when I came in, and we would come up the stair. But before we could get in, we had to wait until the movie, all the cadets would be lined up all the way right down the street and sometime around the block. And we'd have to wait till they get in, and if it's an overflow, they would go up into the balcony, and the chances are we didn't get in for that movie, the 7 o'clock movie. We'd go across the street. There was another movie, theater across the street in the upper level, one of those buildings over there. And we would go to that. It was called a little theater. This one was commonly known as the big theater. So we'd go over there and go to that movie for the first movie, then we'd come back over here, hopefully to get a seat over here. And a lot of times we did, but it was a real popular cowboy movie. Most of the time, back then on Saturday night, all the movies was cowboys and Indians.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's real popular, sometimes we wouldn't get a chance to come to the movie.
So you wouldn't get in at all?
We wouldn't get in at all.
Yeah.
So there was, and we would meet some of our friends in Blacksburg, and most of the time, the upper level deck the balcony would be filled with just adults and black students, so small.
Now, I remember before the theater was remodeled that there's the balcony that's there, and then there was an upper balcony. Did you have access to the whole balcony or just that?
We did have, it was the upper balcony as well, yeah.
And then did that start changing as you got older?
It didn't change at all until integration came along. Yeah.
So that was in the 60s, right, before you could buy a ticket and come in and sit down here.
That's true.
Wow.
You know, a lot of times we would have students from down here wants to come up there, and we wouldn't let them come up there. We say, "This, we can't go down there, and you're not gonna come up here."
Yeah.
So they would tell the projector operator up there to make us behave ourselves. We told him, "We just throw you down there," so we didn't have no problem. Yeah. Yes, it was up into the 60s.
Yeah.
Integration. Blacksburg was integrated a lot earlier than a lot of the other places. Around 61 or 60, we started integrating in Blacksburg.
Now you were back from the Army by then?
No, yeah, I was back from the Army by then.
Yeah.
Right.
You got out of the service in
55, yeah.
I don't know, how did that feel? I've always wondered, you You go in the Army, you can risk your life and carry a rifle or whatever, and then come back and you can't go to the theater.
Not only can't go to theater, oh, I had a bad experience when I came back out of the Army up at the Hokie House. I went to, I was coming in from Roanoke, and I lived down in Wake Forest, and I was sleeping. I wanted to get a cup of coffee, and I went into the Hokie House. On the side door, before I went into the Army, the blacks went into the side door, so I just followed the same custom and went in. I sat down and got some, and ordered my coffee. And though it was two cadets sitting there, I got to talking with them. They found out I just came from Korea, and they was interested in what was going on over there, so we started talking. So they brought the coffee out, because I was expecting to bring it out in a paper cup so I could go, because that was the custom before. They brought it out and they set it in a regular cup. So I proceeded to drink it. Then they went back in the office, back into the kitchen. I noticed them back. They was discussing whether I was black, or perhaps a few African students had started coming here, so they couldn't. The Africans, it was all right for the African students to go in, but not the blacks.
Oh, wow.
So they couldn't distinguish whether I was African or black. So then they finally came out and said, "You got to leave." And I said, "So I'm not going." I said, so they took the cup, the coffee, and poured it in a paper cup and told me I had to leave. And so, but the two students I was talking with, they told me, don't go. You stay here and talk. So if anything happened here, we'll protect you. So I didn't go. Then they said, well, we'll go and get Miss Ryan. She lived right up the street, and she was the owner, operator of the restaurant. So we'll go and get her, and she'll put you out. So it never happened. So I stayed there as long as I wanted to, and finished my conversation with the students. So, but the same integration policy was still the same when I came back out of the military.
Well, you mentioned Wake Forest and growing up in Wake Forest. So you were a country boy as opposed to a city boy in Newtown.
Right.
Was there much difference between growing up in Wake Forest and growing up in Newtown?
Yeah, it sure was. I imagine, because not having an experience at that time of Newtown. I would come up even on the weekends because my mother worked up here, and she had a live-in job. Back in those days, the professors at Virginia Tech, most of them had maids or child care persons to take care, and they stayed there. So a lot of times when I came to the movie here, I would not go back to Wake Forest in the car. I would just stay for the weekend. Yeah. And sometimes I'm already here. I didn't ride up here in the car. I rode back in the car. So I would probably go out to the Newtown sometime with my mother and just visit some of the people out there.
Did you come into Blacksburg to school?
Oh, no, we have a school in Wake Forest, our elementary school, that went through the 7th grade. But I passed through Blacksburg every day when I was going to high school on the bus. We went to Christiansburg Institute.
So there was a bus that just for Christiansburg Institute that would pick the kids up out there and take them to Christiansburg.
Right, you picked them up, and we stopped in Blacksburg and at Newtown to pick them up. Then we got on the other end of town out where Aubrey, Nellis Curve Road, and we picked up some of the children from there.
This is a bus that didn't have sides on it? Or it didn't have windows?
No, it had windows.
Really?
It was just a used bus that they had been using for the other schools, and we never had a new bus. It's always a second-hand bus.
How many kids were going to CI from Wake Forest?
Probably 10 or 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How many families were in Wake Forest?
Oh, roughly. I'd have to take a calculated guess. It was probably about 20 families. Yeah.
And did most of those people work on farms?
Oh, a combination of three. They worked at Kentland Farm and Adams Farm, and they worked at the coal mines.
Oh, yeah.
And most of them worked the men worked in the coal mine.
Oh, yeah.
And the women came to Blacksburg and worked some at Tech in the cleaners and the laundry, and they worked as maids in the housing in Blacksburg.
Did you ever work in the mines?
No, I didn't. I was in there when we got 16 years of age. They would call what they call an introductory to the mines. They would take us kids down at 16 and to go in and see if we like it, whether we want to work there. And they told us and we walked down in the mines and said, when you decide this is not for you, you get scared, you turn around and go back. So I kept looking back and seeing the hole. You could see the light, and it's trying to get. After a while, you see no light. When I saw no light, I turned around and went back out. And somebody else was behind me. I could hear him walking. I didn't know who it was. So it was two of us. We came out. So they didn't know that we'd come out because they kept on walking into the mine.
Yeah.
And so that's when I decided coal mining was not for me. So when I finished high school, and my mother and grandmother told me that they wouldn't be financially or have the means to send me off to college, so I had to go to Christiansburg Institute and find study something that I could make a living off of, which happened to be barbering in my case.
So they had the barber training at Christiansburg Institute.
Yeah.
But that was after you graduated from high school?
Yeah, no.
It was while you were in high school?
Oh, when you go to Christiansburg as a freshman, you go through a course they call introductory course of all the trades. They had a lot of trades there. They had barbering, carpentry, bricklaying, and pipe. It's called plumbing now. They call it pipe fitting then.
Uh-huh.
And that was for the men, the boys, and for the girls, they just had cosmetology and typing.
Uh-huh.
They call it business courses. But so you went through all of those courses, the men courses, for 6 weeks, and you made up your mind for your sophomore year which one you're going to take. So I chose barbering, and you go barbering sophomore year and the junior year. Then you get your certificate in it. Then you got one more year to finish up in academic. So you got your trade before you got out. Your junior year, you finished whatever trade you went in.
So when you were finished with the course at CI, you could get your license and open up a shop?
There wasn't any license at the time.
Ah.
Yeah, the license didn't start until '62 in the state of Virginia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So when you were in the Army, did you cut hair in the Army?
Yes, I did. They somehow discovered in basic training that I was a barber. They just were going over records, and they called me in and told me that I wouldn't have to go out in the fields on training on Saturday. I could just stay there and cut the soldiers' hair, because a lot of them would complain they couldn't get in the barber shop on post to get a haircut. Some of them just make an excuse, but so they put me to work, and I would work up to sometimes 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
I never got a chance to go downtown because the last bus going down to Augusta, Georgia. I was in Augusta, Georgia, Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Yeah.
So the last bus leaving the post going down was around 11 o'clock, and I wasn't finished, so I didn't get a chance. But I ended up with a sock full of 50 cents because they were charging 50 cents a haircut.
Yeah.
So I did that most of the time that I was in basic training.
And then would you do that when you were in Korea also?
En route to Korea, yes, and not too much. I did it on the ship. They had a little sign up on wanting barbers, and I saw that, and I went over to the barber shop. They put me to work, so I barbered all the way till I got to Japan. Then after that, in Korea, they had a real crude barber shop with just one little old light and a Korean barber that was using hand tools. And so I would go over and help him, because in my training, we had to learn to do hand tools.
Oh.
We cut hair with hand tools before we could get the electric tools.
Uh-huh.
So I would go over and help him sometimes, and sometimes he seemed to have been sick, and he had a family, so and we charged a quarter in Korea, and I would give him the quarters.
Ah.
Yeah. Then I stayed in Korea for a year and then came to Japan. So I got my tools from home, and I cut hair in Japan, yeah.
What did you do when you weren't cutting hair in Korea?
Oh, I was a military policeman. I was out there on patrol,
Oh, my.
or walking around the compound with a rifle.
That sounds scary.
It could have been.
Yeah.
At times it was scary.
Well, now you came back. We got back in '55,
Right.
and so you're a young guy looking to start your career,
Yeah.
and never thought about doing anything other than your barbering trade.
Oh, I really went for having been a policeman military policeman for 2 years. I wanted to get into police, and so I applied at these in Blacksburg and Christiansburg, Salem, Roanoke, and at Arsenal. And matter of fact, when I was drafted into the Army from the Arsenal, and they had promised me that I have a job when I got back. Oh, they did it with everybody that when you get drafted out of the Arsenal, they'd come up and congratulate you for going into the services to protect your country and fight for your country or whatever, and say when you get back you are assured a job when you come back.
Yeah.
When I came back, I didn't get the job back because they said they had cut off below my number, so I didn't get a job.
Huh.
At the time, blocks only had 2 jobs over there, and that was janitorial service and roads and grounds.
Oh,
And see, and I was trying to get a job as a guard since I had training there, but I didn't get it. So after not getting a job, I left. Shortly after I came out of the Army, I went to Charleston, West Virginia to live with an aunt because I'd met a fellow in the Army that was going to West Virginia college. And so he drove right by where my aunt lived. And so I was trying to get to go off to college in West Virginia. I tell other people that I'm alumni from that school, but I never spent but 1 week down there. Never had any class because I never got in.
Yeah.
I've been out of state. They were taking in-state students first, and I was a little late getting there, probably 2 or 3 days getting there. And so at the time, we had a GI Bill, and there weren't any jobs at the time for people out. The West Virginia soldiers that returned, mostly, they filled up the schools. So they would tell me to come back every day, say, if anybody drops out, you in. But
nobody ever did. Huh?
So they asked me to go up into the city of Charleston. They had a night school up there, a trade school, and I tried to get in there, and they had the same problem there. So then I came back to Blacksburg.
Boy, it seems to be a continuing problem for veterans, doesn't it? That seems to be happening to veterans today. They come back and trying to get a job and.
Right. I think it's a little better for them now because they got employees and a system that they can help them get a job. But then they didn't have it when I came out.
Yeah. What were you put back because you were black? You know, for benefits or whatever from the Army or getting into school?
No, I don't think so. I think I've had probably the same as anyone else here.
So you got back to Blacksburg in 55, 56?
Well, 56, that time I came back from Charleston, couldn't get in school. I worked at the Hillcrest, the girls' dormitory. I worked in the kitchen there as a salad maker.
Oh, wow.
So I learned to make all the salads. and matter of fact, I lived there at Hillcrest with one of the other persons. And we couldn't get to work on time. We had to be there about 6 o'clock. And so they said, okay, you can't get to work at time. We got a bedroom downstairs. You want to live downstairs? So we said, yeah. So I lived there for a year, right at Hillcrest in the basement. And then this is when I got into barbering. I was going in Newtown. I was just going from door to door, cutting people's hair out there. You know, I cut one of the little boys' hair out there, and he was a shoe shine boy. So he went back to the barbershop at Tech. It's called Tech Barbershop. And they looked at his haircut and sort of dissected my haircut. And they said, well, this guy can cut your hair. He can cut anybody's hair down here at Tech. Yeah. So they sent for me to come down there, and that's how I got a job. I didn't even know it was a shop down there.
Oh.
So I went down to help them in 56 to cut the freshman cadets' hair, and they're just supposed to be in a temporary job. So I ended up staying 18 years.
Wow. Yeah. Where was the barbershop on campus?
It's in Then it was called the SAB, Student Activity Building. And then it was in there. It's what is now Squire Student Center.
Uh-huh.
But inside, it was that back there near the bowling alley was right in back. So it was in that area, and it was called Tech. It was Tech Barbershop, and it was ran by Virginia Tech Athletic Association. They had all the concessions at Virginia Tech at that time, and the barbershop happened to be one of them. They had the laundry, sandwich shop, bookstore, and so I worked for
the athletic.
I worked for the athletic. Yeah. I had to report to Mr. Mosby. Mr. Mosby was the head coach, and he's the athletic director. Back then, the athletic director and it was the head coach, in most cases, football head coach. Yeah. So he was my boss. He was my top boss. We had one in between. A business manager was in the building. Oh, and I really had a hard time with him. His name was Harry Klingenpier. He was devout. He didn't let it be. It wasn't unknown, or he let it be known that he was a segregationist. He didn't say it, but it was quite obvious. Yeah. So he attempted to give us a hard time.
So were all the barbers black guys?
We were all black guys, and Mr. Klingenpier would not give us. He didn't give us tickets to go to the football games, although we were working for the Athletic Association. And we didn't know that the janitors would come in and ask, "You going to football game?" We say, "No, we're not going. We don't have a ticket." He said, "Well, Mr. Klingenpier gave us a ticket." So we went out and asked him, "Why didn't he give us a ticket?" He would say, "I thought you guys wouldn't want to go because they had a tag hanging on you, and you go in the gate. If they needed somebody to move some chairs or do some things, they would look for the people with the tags."
Uh-huh.
And so we told him we would go. There's no problem. So he finally gave us the tickets.
Oh, nice.
And as soon as we got into the gates, we just threw the ticket in the fresh trash can and went home.
And you've been going to the games ever since?
I've been going to games ever since. I mean, back in the early 50s. Well, I went before I went in the Army, I was going.
Yeah.
I started in the 40s. By 49, I started going to Tech game when it was over in the old Miles Stadium.
Uh-huh.
And they had wooden bleachers behind the goal post for us blacks, and they had a big sign out of a cardboard box, and they take a cardboard box, cut it off 4 corners, tack it up, and it was written colored across the cardboard box. That's the area we sat in.
Yeah. Well, was that gone in the 60s?
Yeah, it was gone in the 60s, but the bleachers were still there.
Yeah.
But the colored sign was gone.
So you could sit anywhere, or you could have a assigned seat anywhere.
No. You still had that.
Oh, you had to go sit in that
same area. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, not all the 60s. Finally, it did change in the 60s. Well, I would say around. I would say it was gone before that, because it was more in the 50s, 49s and 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you started then, while you were at the Tech Barbershop, you were also going to Newtown and cutting hair in Newtown?
Yeah, because they had a rule down there. See, at the time when I went there, the first black students came to Blacksburg in '53, so they were already here when I got here. And so when I went there, they told me that the ruling there was you can only cut the black students' hair before 8 o'clock or after 6 o'clock, after working hours, the normal hours. So I would stay and cut their hair after the shop closed, and it wasn't about 4 of them here.
Yeah.
So that was the practice then. I went there in '56, and so it never changed until I changed it. What happened? It only 4, but every year maybe 4 more come. So you get 8, and it's just the black student population started increasing, but my work didn't increase because I was the only one who was doing it. The other barbers would leave at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I became the manager, and I stayed there and did it. So after a while, every day, I would have to stay late. So when we got around '62, I decided to just integrate the barbershop. and just told me, from now on, you come anytime. Anybody else, you come from 9, you come from 8 to 6, just like any other students. So I didn't get that permission from anybody to do it, because I know Mr. Klingenberg wouldn't let me do it. So he found out later when the janitors went in and told him that we were cutting the coloreds. He always called us coloreds out there. So but during the time, during the summer, the Corps Cadet went on campus, which they're not on campus now. So there wasn't any students there, and there wasn't much for us to do. So at Quantico, Virginia, that's where most of the troops were, and they needed help, and there was one barber was working there. So he invited us from down here, so 3 of the barbers from here, we would go to Quantico, Virginia for the summer. And this left one barber in the shop. So Mr. Klingenberg went back and asked him who gave him permission to cut the colored students' hair. And he told him that Mr. Johnson did. He said, I'll take it up with him when he came back. I came back to this day, he never said a word.
He said a word, yeah.
Because the sky hadn't fallen, so yeah. I guess.
Somehow everybody survived.
Everybody survived, so he didn't say anything.
Earth kept spinning, the sun kept rising.
Right. He would be, the barbers in Blacksburg would come down and ask me to go up on the prices, or quarter on the prices, when you went up your increments of quarters. And they wouldn't go up in the town of Blacksburg unless we went up on campus, because most of the business in Blacksburg town was students too. They were cadets as well. So I'd have to go through Mr. Kingpin and go up to Mr. Mosey to get a quarter raised. Yeah. So that was always an act of Congress to get that done. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how the sports enterprise has tentacles reaching out to so many people, isn't it?
Yeah, but once the students learned that the money generated from the concession on campus, including the barbershop, they boycott. They boycott all of that, and that's when I don't know the year, but that's when, at that time is when the barbershop changed. The barbershop changed. That's when they changed and got out of the athletic association and set up auxiliary or something they have now. So we went out because
when did Tech start recruiting black athletes? Do you know?
It's in the 60s, so no, yeah. One fellow, John Dobbins, was the first one from Radford, running back. Yeah. So then they still had some policies over there. They didn't have any black coaches or no black referees. And so later, the group from here in Blacksburg, Human Relations Council and the NAACP, got together and went over and talked to Coach Dooley about the situation. And he was having a problem with the tour program where he left North Carolina. They had it, and here they didn't have it for the athletes.
Yeah.
So while we was over talking to the president and the head coach and so forth, he wanted us to tell him about that program that he needed. So we got that done, and we got some coaches here, and we got some black or referees.
Yeah.
Because at that time they had a lot of black players out there at that time. Yeah. But it's in the 60s probably, and I might say late 60s, early 70s. Yeah.
I had a student, Joyce Williams Green. You probably know Ed Green.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And she was telling me one day while she was still a student, she was saying she was going to Winston-Salem, and for the weekend she's going to drive down there. I said, what's happening down there? And she said, well, I'm going to go get my hair done. I thought, why don't you get your hair done here?
Oh, yeah.
She said, nobody here that can do my hair. Yeah. So that was in the 80s, and she was still there still wasn't anybody here who could style black women's hair.
Yeah, but when I moved off campus and moved up on Main Street, I did open up a hair salon for the black women, for anybody, but predominantly black women. And she might have been just a little too early or too late, but I'm almost sure she did patronize my shop. When she told you that, she probably didn't know.
Yeah, that was when she was first first became
came,
a student
you're right,
here.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, she
yeah.
just started.
Oh yeah, she
And she came from down there too.
Right, yeah. So, but I did open that up. Matter of fact, I still have it yet, and the same name. It's called Hair World Salon, but not. It's where the tobacco shop is now. I had that same space,
Ah,
and we did, and I had over 4 stylists in there, black stylists, doing women from. Not only Joyce had the problem, the women in Blacksburg were going to black women were going to Bluefield and Roanoke. So once I opened up, they didn't have to go anymore.
uh-huh.
So
So that was a need you felt. That,
Yeah, I
that
felt
was
it.
your first shop was in where the tobacco shop is?
well, no, I had both. I had I had New Image, and I had both. They had so I had New Image and Hair World Salon
Where was New Image then?
right beside it.
Oh, so they were right there together.
It's Hobby's barbershop is in the same space.
Uh-huh.
So I had the two. The tobacco shop is where I had the hair salon for the women. Yeah. And so when I moved into town, that's another thing they wouldn't let me do on campus or integrate the shop. So I couldn't hire another non-black individual. One barber came through, I remember his name, Lawton, and I gave him a job because he needed a job. He had a family and 2 children, and he happened to be a white individual. So then when he went out to the office, they had to sign up. Mr. Klingpill wouldn't let him fill out the application, sign up, his Social Security and all that. So he went back to Radford because they had sent him over from the employment office. I had gone there and told him I needed some help. And when he went back up, they called me and asked him, why didn't you put him to work? I said, you call Mr. Klingpill. He the one didn't fill out the application. Yeah. So he never would. So the guy never got a job with us. Yeah. And I asked him why he did. He said he thought we couldn't get along back together. He's always thinking for me.
Yeah.
So I told him, I say, I just left Quantico where I work side by side with non-blacks. So we don't have no problem with that. We need some help.
Yeah.
So he would do things like that. Yeah.
It's unfortunately folks kind of get the mindset and race and religion seem to be two of the ones that just can't get people to change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He liked to control our
control. Yeah.
Yeah. The money what we get. That's when it wouldn't go up. When we worked real hard. Incidentally, the haircuts was 65 cents when I went to work down there, and then finally, by the time I left, they'd gotten up to $2, and that was in 18 years. Yeah. So he would always try to control our money.
But you managed that, but you were on salary, or did you?
Oh, I was on commission. I just got a little more commission than the other barbers. Yeah.
So when you opened your own shop, what sort of challenges did you face when you had your own shop? Now I know you had a little shop on Turner Street for a while, didn't you? Right.
Yeah. But that's while I was down on the campus. But I closed that because it was to serve the black in Newtown, because so I served the blacks in Newtown in that shop. But at the time they could have come down on the campus if they wanted to. For some reason they just didn't come. A few of them did. Most of them didn't. So eventually I just closed and said, you either come on campus get your hair cut or go somewhere, wherever. Yeah. Some of the challenges that I ran into when I moved into Blacksburg, I had some of the barbers would lower their price lower than mine. And they would lower price. The matter of fact, the whole time, I 27 years, I had one. Price was always $1 lower than mine.
Oh yeah.
My theory is to work smarter, not harder. So
Yeah.
if you want to work hard, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
And so when I came into the town of Blacksburg, some of them, they resented me being there because it was competition to them. And so I had a hard time trying to even find a place in Blacksburg, some people to even rent me a place so I could come here, first of all. A lot of people would just wouldn't rent. And so it might have been something that the barbers had told them don't rent to them. And so then after I got into Blacksburg, every shop had a different price. Every shop was closed in different times. And so I wanted to do something about this, and I was in a barbering union down in Roanoke. It's not a union, it's a barbering organization. And at the time, there was another sort of national, or at least on the East Coast, Master Association of Barbers. And so and they wanted to set up a chapter in Blacksburg. And so one gentleman came down from Pennsylvania, came down, and he and I went to all the barbershops in the whole New River Valley. But he being Italian and me being black, they didn't buy that. And we had a meeting, we only had two people to come. And so he spent almost 3 or 4 days here trying to convince the people this is what we needed. And so they never did do it. So he left, and later on, I would want to compromise with them, so the few of the people, barbers here, decided they decided to do it, because I was telling them, I said, you're not making any money, you're working too hard. And I said, you confuse your people, because everybody had a different time of close and different time of open. I was just trying to get everybody on the same page. So we had a meeting with them, and I went down to the meeting. Apparently they've had the meeting before I got there, and one barber spoke up and said, Johnson, I'll tell you what you do. We will close on Monday if you would go back up on the hill and just cut black folks' hair. I said, no way, I'm gonna do it. I said, it's not my problem that you guys can only cut white folks' hair. I said, I can cut any human hair that come in the door.
Yeah.
And so I stayed a little while and I left. So some of the other barbers apologized to me for his remark. But
yeah. So that organization fell apart pretty quickly.
It did, yeah, right. It never really got started.
Yeah.
I think had someone else been trying to get it started other than myself and the Italian guy, I think it would have started.
Yeah.
Because we had a good idea.
Yeah. Organizing is tough, though.
Oh, it is, yeah.
So you've got what 50 plus years now?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And looking back, what do you see as the most significant events or things you've learned across those 50 years? We want to pass this wisdom on to others.
I have to give it a little thought on that one.
Yeah.
Looking back. What the past with? It's just set a goal and set out to reach that goal, and try to. There's a lot of obstacles you're gonna run into along the line, but don't give up and just keep pressing on, and eventually you will succeed. Had I not stopped the first day that I moved into town, coming off campus, I had the bad experience of the barbershop was already, I moved in a more or less a defunct barbershop, and it was already operating, and it was just all whites in there, but two of the guys had decided to stay with me when I went there. And the other guy, the morning I walked in, he packed up his stuff and left. I had had a couple of meetings prior, and he never came to the meeting. And so he packed up and left, which was quite a disappointment for me, because then I worked it, and one of the other barbers told him, he said, you know why John left? I said, I had no idea why he left. He said he wasn't going to work for no black man, so he left. But the same John, after about 2 months, because he had a wife and 2 small children, and the other guy, he found out that things had gotten better in the shop and everybody was making more money than they was before I got there. Because I just turned everything around and just reorganized everything and got things going. And so he came back and asked for his job back, and I gave him his job back. I never mentioned that I knew he'd stayed there. And he stayed there and worked for a couple of years, and he decided he's going to go to a Bible school in Bluefield. And I wrote him a good recommendation. And so he may be preaching somewhere now, I don't know.
So persistence is one
persistent,
of those.
Yeah, be persistent and be professional.
One of the things that you're well known for in Blacksburg, and I think one of the reasons so many people admire you, is that is your commitment to your community. It's not just, it's not just business,
Right,
but,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's more than business. It's really the community that matters.
Right, yeah, your community. And I belong to, well, 2 committees in the town of Blacksburg and numerous other organizations, the Masons, Elks, you name it. I'm a Boy Scout master, so I had a troop down at McCoy. It's down the Wake Forest at McCoy. So, and I was a member of the NAACP and the Blacksburg, let me see, so I'm trying to think of the name of it. Anyway, they was doing integration, this organization, more so than the Human Relations Council, Montgomery County Human Relations County. They were more active in bringing about integration in Blacksburg than the NAACP and other. And that was a good part of it. Each one of us had a committee assignment when the integration came along. Even, that was in the early 60s. We had assignment that things to do. My assignment, along with Dr. Alls, just recently passed, was to go to all the employment places around the factories and so forth in Blacksburg and see can we get blacks and minorities employed, along with integrate the banks of Blacksburg. Mm-hmm. And each person or group of people had their assignments. And everybody set out, some of them had this theater, to get this theater integrated. And they would go and talk to the manager or owner of it. The restaurants the same way, some were assigned to restaurants. And so everybody set out and went out within a month, and then they brought the reports back. And Blacksburg folks decided, along with our organization, that we would not be burning down buildings and dogs in the streets and all that gun stuff was going on everywhere else. And the good people of Blacksburg just settled that we're not going to do it. And things got integrated in Blacksburg, yeah.
And so that was really a product, you think, of this outreach by these community leaders.
Right,
you and others.
Yeah, and churches. Even at that time, they had some churches we couldn't meet in Blacksburg, yeah.
So did that spread to Christiansburg? And
It did, yeah, right, yeah. Especially in the banks, I know the banks.
And the schools started integration in early 60s?
Oh, not the early, 66.
Really?
That's when my high school closed in 66.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the school closed over in Christiansburg Institute, I would say that's when they finally closed. Blacksburg High School might have been integrated maybe in 62 or something, just 2 students.
Uh-huh.
And that happened in, so Christiansburg Institute had students from Pulaski, Giles County, Floyd County, and all of Montgomery County and city of Radford. So when the integration came along with, I think it's called freedom of choice, that's when they started to, some of the families started putting their children in these schools closer to home, Radford or Pulaski.
Yeah.
And so some of them had a few in there, roughly probably less than 10 in most of the schools. Then in 66, the Pulaski decided they're going to stop sending 2 buses down to Christiansburg Institute, and they're going to educate all their children in Pulaski County. And Radford did the same thing, and after a while, it was just happened. They didn't have enough students to operate Christiansburg Institute, so it abruptly closed. Matter of fact, we just had a alumni school reunion just this past weekend, and a lot of the students came back, yeah.
How many people came?
Oh, probably 150.
Oh, great.
Yeah. The class of 63 had 17 to come back. And this was their 50th year, so 17 came back.
Yeah. Would the county's school systems pay tuition to CI to support the students?
They did. And see, we had the dormitories over there too. They would say Giles County would send their people over and stay in the dormitory. But the family had to help them. They didn't give them much tuition. Or sometimes they would come and live in homes in the Christiansburg area. So, but we had at Christiansburg Institute not only just students from these counties I just mentioned, we had them from other states, some of the northern states, with D.C. and Maryland and Delaware, all the way up to Connecticut.
When you think about the education that you got and the character building and message, the broader message of ways to live and so forth that you got when you were in Christiansburg Institute, and the kind of education that you see children who grew up around you in the 60s and 70s and then today, how do you rate the quality of that education?
Well, I think our quality was probably better than theirs. The teachers were more interested in your learning, and they gave you individual attention. And at Christiansburg Institute, even at the elementary, we learned a lot about respect of other individuals, and we really learned a lot of things. One example, I thought that we didn't. Our educators have always been told our education was inferior to the other schools in the county, but I really found out real quick when I went into the Army that it wasn't. So in the Army, they line you up according to your last name, Johnson. So they lined us up Johnson. So I had a white Johnson on the right, white Johnson on the left, and the guy was up there with bullhorn, calling out instructions and so forth. And you had to write things down on the paper. They couldn't keep up. But they was telling me, I can't hear. What did he say? What did he say? And so they was bothering me. I couldn't write my paper. I would reach over and get their 2 papers. So I was doing 3 papers at the same time. But I later learned these guys really didn't have much education. They couldn't read too well. And that was the problem. They was hearing, but they couldn't keep up. But I think the quality of Christiansburg Institute and the elementary school, the teachers was concerned, and they wanted you to learn, and they wanted you to excel and go on to better things. So they put a lot of emphasis in it. And the religions was brought in because we were Quaker school, especially the high school. You had 15 minutes of religious devotion before you started class every day. And then once a week you go over as a assembly, the whole school go over to the auditorium and have an hour of devotions. And the principal would bring you up to date on what's going on and what he's expect of you for the next week. But it was just quality education. Most people left Christiansburg Institute, went out and excelled in some of the trades, or went on to college and doing great things in life. And we had some of them back this weekend.
So you had strong community influences when you were in Wake Forest, but from your own family and from other families that lived there, and then you had in elementary school the same sort of ethic that you not only are responsible for yourself, but you're responsible to others as well. And then at CI the same message.
It was the same message. And Wake Forest was sort of a real close-knit community, and just everybody helped everybody in Wake Forest. See, we weren't too many generations away from Kentland Farm. So we.
Now, these as that sense of community as a guiding principle for your own life. Can you talk about how you instilled that in children around you and your family and other families?
I set out that they should, first of all, get education, respect the elders, and not depend on other people for a living, and just in general, just get goals in life and set out to obtain them.
And you've also reached out to other family members or neighbors who are having problems and taking them in as well, haven't you?
Yeah, sure. Even now, I feel like a counselor over at Tech. You'd be surprised how many foreign students come in, and after come in and just have some problems or want me to ask me some questions or be a counselor to them, or I can almost assure it, if I'm there at 6 o'clock and some foreigner knocked on the door, he's not necessarily wanting a haircut.
Yeah.
They want to talk about some things they just don't understand in America.
Yeah.
Some things we as Americans do, and so forth.
So have you used your barber chair as kind of a pulpit for philosophizing and?
Right. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. However, yeah.
That's really interesting. You got a captive person there, and
right, you do.
being able to, particularly young people.
And they run into some people. Not now. I don't see too many people. And when I first came, when I first started, there was a lot of people that didn't have money to even get the service. So I have a policy down that everybody gets a haircut, whether they have the money or not. But we don't tell them that. We don't tell the general public because there'd be too many people coming in wanting a haircut.
Yeah.
We do it now. Say somebody come in here, they don't have money or not enough. Excuse me. You cut the hair. We still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And then you had back during the time when the black students were here, I helped them a lot because they didn't have transportation. Mm-hmm. I had a car, and from time to time they want to go home. So I would drive them all the way to Norfolk. On the weekend, take them to Norfolk.
Oh, wow.
And one weekend I couldn't go to Norfolk, I let them use the car.
Oh.
They used my car to go to Norfolk. And then some of them were taking pilot training out at the airport. Then you couldn't walk off the Cape to the airport. You had to come down Main Street and go out to where those bridges and come back into the airport. So they used my car about twice a week to get to the airport.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then on weekends, if they want to go someplace, they had friends in various colleges around the state, and so we just load up on Friday and go out to the college. We go to West Virginia and Richmond and all the way to Norfolk. As a matter of fact, we went to Tuskegee.
Oh.
Yeah, and we would go to those colleges and where their friends, and just sleep in whoever's bed wasn't in the dorm that night. And then Sunday night we head back to Blacksburg.
Yeah.
So they really appreciate it, and I those same students I still keep in contact with.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really wonderful legacy.
Yeah, they were the four students I had to cut their hair after. Happened to be the four students I used to cut their hair after they were closed. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, I noticed you got some notes there, and you got some things.
I just had some notes, but you pretty well covered my notes.
Oh. Well, I just wanted to see if there was anything on there that.
Let me see here. Virginia Tech, Army Crew. Robert, no. You pretty well covered it. Yeah.
So what are you thinking about over the next few years in terms of? You've had this very successful business. You've been you have this revered position in the community as a leader and a respected person. What are you thinking about for the next few years in terms of what you want to accomplish?
I'd like to get someone else to sort of take some of the leadership roles that I'm doing now to keep the ball rolling, really.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I can't find too many people who's interested in doing a lot of things, Yeah.
So we need to cultivate some young people
right.
to come up and take on
yeah,
some of these
right.
community responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing, even in my business, I'd like for someone else to take over it. I would likely sell it, and it'd likely be somebody that's not from Blacksburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder about that often myself. I mean, here we are, two elderly gentlemen,
Yeah.
and both of us kind of looking back and wondering where the young people are and what we need to do to involve younger people. Do you think there's any reason why we don't see people accepting those kind of responsibilities now?
I know the reason why the blacks are not receptive because they think they've overcome. So see, they got all these opportunities that I never had. So they don't think that they need to do anything. So perhaps they think there's not much left for them to do because we've already accomplished. You know, they in the schools and doing things that, and they go to the restaurants and they don't have to go through what I've gone through. And so it's hard to get them to come in like NAACP or the Human Relations Council or something like that. They think there's nothing left for them to do, which it is. There's still a lot of things to be left to do.
Maybe you need to feel that fire before you start getting tempered enough to have enough steel to get into something and stick with it.
Right, yeah, right, yeah.
It's kind of a little bit sad that you have to have problems or issues before you recognize those.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That's when they act after the problem arrives, yeah. Should be a little more proactive would help, yeah.
We need to figure that one out.
You sure do.
Yeah.
All the psychology department tech might be able to figure it out. They're always looking for things to do.
The leadership issue is a big one these days. It really is.
You just don't find too many people who want to go into leadership. They're not good followers either.
Yeah. Don't want to lead and don't want to follow.
Right. That's true.
That's not a
real
real
complain about what's the issue. They complain about the issue, don't want to do anything about it.
I wonder if we ought to talk a few minutes about the Oddfellows Hall in Newtown and what kind of vision we have for that. Can you say a few words about what we need to do and what we're looking for in terms of memorializing Newtown?
Well, we probably need more publicity about it. And so just a lot of people, it's come since the other night, has called me about it, and they say they didn't know. I think if you get more publicity out there, it would help and get a lot more interested people interested in it would help. And so then they just would need to put the history of Newtown and Oddfellow Hall out there. So that's just mostly the Blacksburg people know about it.
Yeah.
And the outside of Blacksburg, like Raff and Christiansburg, they don't. Yeah. It was just the Oddfellow was just a meeting place for mostly Blacksburg blacks. Yeah.
Yeah. Even in Blacksburg, outside of the folks who lived there or were a legacy with Newtown, not many people know about it.
They don't. So publicity is going to be one thing. I think once you get the publicity out, I think that it'll generate people wanting to help or do something about it.
Yeah. Well, that's something for us to work on for the next few years.
Yeah. We'll get it done.
I think we will too.
Yeah, we'll get it done.
Yeah, I think we will.